My name is Gary Kalati. I'm the CEO at Alexa Translations. Very happy to be the host for today and moderator. I have a very fun group and a panel that is very entertaining. We have a magician that may occasionally disappear. We have a beatbox that is live, and we'll make sure that you experience all of it throughout the presentation today. There will be a test at the end on who was who, so please pay attention. Amongst other things, we will be talking about legal operations, as you can appreciate. And while it's a broad topic, we really have a few themes that we want to make sure we cover today. And know that legal ops people can be a lot of fun between beatboxing and apparitions. So I will start with asking the team to introduce themselves, and we'll do this alphabetically. Chad will go first. We'll go with Dana, Junaid, and then Sarah. So Chad.
Thanks, Gary, and to the Alexa team, and for everyone who's joining. It's always such a pleasure to support Gary and Alexa. I'm a former client also too of the product, so I deeply believe in everything that you built, and Gary, you're such a blessing to this industry. So thank you for having us, and for everyone who's joining, you've got lots of things you could do with your time, and you chose to be here. So appreciate you for doing that. My name's Chad Aboud. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Good Lawyer. If you haven't heard of Good Lawyer, means maybe you're not on LinkedIn that much, because we're there a lot. And then so Good Lawyer is an alternative legal service provider, 200 lawyers coast to coast. Prior to that, I was a general counsel of a PE-backed tech portfolio. Before that, I was in-house at Indigo, and before that, I was an M&A lawyer at Castles. Oh, Gary, you're muted, my man.
You'd think I would be better at this by now, but somehow it muted me automatically. I was not, by the way, I was not the apparition. That's not part of the, I don't want you to get mixed up on that. Dana, if I can pass the virtual mic on to you.
All right, thank you, Gary, and thank you to you and Alexa for having me aboard for today's discussion as well. In terms of my background, I started out my career, I won't say how many years ago, as a litigation lawyer. I moved into claims and legal leadership positions for various multinational property and casualty insurers. I've been at Sun Life for the last 8 years, the last 4 years in the role of the AVP of Legal Operations, with our accountabilities for scalable digital transformation, legal vendor and spend management, data and analytics, as well as some risk governance. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dana. And this time I made sure that I didn't leave myself muted. Junaid, we'll pass it on to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Gary, for having me on, and welcome everyone. I'm Junaid Mirza, partner at PwC Canada, and I have the privilege of leading our legal business solutions practice here in Canada, as well as being part of our GenAI team for the firm overall. Our practice, the legal business solutions practice, is a practice that is focused on modernizing the practice of law. So we work with both in-house legal functions and law firms to optimize processes, reduce friction, make data-driven decisions, deploy technology more effectively. And that means legal operations is something that we think about, talk about day in and day out all the time. I'm not a lawyer by myself. I came into this role by happenstance, came from a background of tax, and then moved into transformation, doing technology implementations, process design. And at some point, got into a position where I started working with lawyers, and that's all I do now every single day, and have had an opportunity to work with some incredible companies from coast to coast.
Junaid, not to put you on the spot, but who's more fun, lawyers or tax practitioners?
Oh, lawyers are way more fun, just because I'm here.
All right, we have lots of witnesses. We now have confirmed that lawyers are more fun than tax practitioners. Thank you, Junaid. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Thank you so much, and welcome everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you. So I am Sarah Ajmi. I am Legal Operations and Technology Manager at TELUS. I am overseeing a quite large portfolio of information management, project management, technology enablement, training and development, and training and development, and of course knowledge management. I started my career more than 10 years ago as an in-house counsel in Morocco, which is a civil law jurisdiction. I wasn't admitted to the bar, like I'm not a non-bar admitted, because in civil law jurisdictions you are required to pass the bar only when you have to represent a client in the courts. And I worked in board governance. I worked as in-house counsel with a very diverse portfolio. Yeah, so this is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And I know there was a few more audience members that joined us since the initial introductions. The only thing I'll encourage you to do as we go through this, feel free if you have anything that you'd like the panel to speak to throw it in the Q&A. And that there is a test at the end on who the beatbox and the apparition are within our audience. So I will start with the first question. And as you saw from the introductions from our panel, you have a very diverse group of panelists. So Junaid works with a variety of departments, has seen what a series of these organizations do. Chad was in private practice, worked in-house, and is now with a service provider to the legal industry. And then both with Sarah and Dana, you get a lot of depth within with large in-house departments. So I'm going to start with the first question, which is, and Junaid, I'll ask you to speak to this first because you would have worked with the most departments, and then we'll go with Chad, Sarah, and Dana. And the question is, from your experience with working with legal departments, what are the most common inefficiencies that you encounter in the course of legal operations? And specifically in the legal department more broadly, because the inefficiency wouldn't come from legal ops, but in the practice of legal ops, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can. Thank you for that, Gary. I can try to answer actually both pieces of it in terms of inefficiency with respect to legal ops, and then inefficiency with respect to the legal function, very briefly. The challenge that most legal operations teams face, in my experience, from what we see, is for vast majority of organizations that have a legal operations team, they're hamstrung by lack of a clear mandate. It's, you don't have, you're always juggling between what is it that falls within the purview of legal operations team versus the IT team, legal operations team versus the procurement team, and for that matter, legal operations team versus the HR or the change management team. Because legal operations is really a combination of all of those things in one place. And where it works really well, where they are really efficient, is they can play that coordinator role and have the buy-in from all these different groups to bring them in as needed. Where it runs into challenges is when that clear mandate isn't there from an overall enterprise perspective, that this is what legal ops is responsible for, and this is how they're going to, this is the sandbox in which they're going to play. Now, when legal operations is working on inefficiencies of the legal function, there's a long list there, right? But I would say if I was to divide it into a couple of different categories, I would say it relates to fragmented processes. In a lot of legal functions, we don't really have well-documented processes, not a really good understanding of how do you triage, how do you risk rate things that come in, how do you allocate them, and who do you allocate them to within the legal organization. So that's a significant role that the legal operations team can play. Technology misalignment is another bucket, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. And then poor data and metrics, right? Data-driven decisions are important for legal operations. They're important for legal function to operate, but often you just don't have the data to be able to make those decisions as effectively as you would like.
Thank you, Junaid, and I'm sure that a lot of those points resonate with the audience. Chad, I know your perspective is from multiple fronts.
I think it's storytelling. When I was thinking about creating legal ops and legal tech in a big portfolio of tech companies, you need it, the problems. The technology is now pervasive, much more than it was 6 years ago when I was doing it. So like the actual problems and solutions, we're not blind to them anymore. It is, how do you get the other stakeholders to want you to solve their problem? And I think where we're inefficient is knowing how to storytell. And I think it's because we talk a lot from our own perspective because we live and breathe it every day. This is what's painful. This is what we would do. This is how we would solve it. All of that is most often irrelevant to the business team that is a stakeholder or a beneficiary of what legal and LegalOps does. The way that you flip that is talking about it from their perspective. And I think there's a lot of inefficiency there. The thing that I love about that is it's one of the fastest things to get better at. It's not long lead time sourcing tech. It's not identifying that LegalOps matters. It is learning how to storytell more efficiently.
Chad, we're going to have to do a webinar just on storytelling efficiently. We'll bring you to workshop that live
Anytime, brother.
With the audience. Sarah.
Yeah, sure. I have a real world scenario I can share with you and the audience. In our case, for example, we have been involved in many requests coming from many legal teams, like across, like within our overall legal team, regarding to automating the meta managements and automating the redlining. So these two came a lot from from a lot of legal teams, because we have a large legal team, and I can start with the automation of the contracting, and especially the redlining phase. So this one specifically to NDAs, for example, like as an initial example, this one came a lot. Like since I started with TELUS, I always hear this from various team members, especially like our paralegals who deal with this one, especially when they have to redline the third-party agreements templates. And so it's time consuming for them to review the third-party agreements templates, to do the verification, the review, and the decision and everything. And just to answer your question, the second portion of your question, Gary, what we did to help them in that is that, for example, we helped them leverage our internal AI tool. So we have our own AI tool that is called Fuel IX, and every team member has the ability to develop their own copilots. And so we helped them develop, like these paralegals, we helped them develop their own copilot, AI copilot that will help them do this work on their behalf, like the initial, on the first set of reviewing, comparing, analyzing, and then they will just do like a final verification. And also I remember we went into a lot of demonstration with like in the market to see what is available there that we cannot have internally. And at the end, we just saw that like there is no business case for us to move forward. And one last example is our procurement team, who went with another internal development team to develop an automated what we call it automated a clause library, clause template library. So this one was very valuable for them.
Thank you, Sarah. And Dana, last, certainly not least, we know.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, everything that Junaid, Chad, and Sarah resonates. What I would add, having worked across multiple in-house teams, is recognizing when you're looking at legal processes that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. You're dealing with different practice areas. You're dealing with lawyers and legal professionals who've come from different experiences. Most people who have come into an in-house environment didn't start their career out there. They learned in large firms, small firms with varying levels of technology. So trying to create some standardization, which is important for technology implementation, which is important for knowledge management, can certainly be a bit of a challenge when you're trying to corral and meet all of those expectations across the board. So I would say, in terms of legal processes, that certainly is one of the challenges that we've tried to solve for.
Thank you very much, Dana. And I'm pivoting to an important point. And as Junaid said, we were going to get to this, is introducing technology and balancing that. And the reason why it's important is, I mean, it's become more pervasive than ever before. We talk about it a lot more. There's a lot more service providers or technology providers out there. I certainly feel like this. I'm sure the audience does as well, that we're getting more emails than ever saying, hey, we can do this for you and we can do this for you. And it's a bit of a balancing act. So speaking of balancing act, and the way we'll go with this one will be Chad, Dana, and then Junaid and Sarah. And Chad, I'll start with you. And the real question is, how do you balance the need for adopting new technology with the change management that comes to actually implementing these effectively?
Smallest win first. Like, you have to have a data point of proof for your own team and for other people. Makes it so much easier to justify spend. So the example that I did was go into this tech portfolio. We're about to acquire 10 companies in a year, lots of individual companies that were doing things naturally in their own bespoke way. That's not going to be sustainable. So first thing I write on the whiteboard is like, we're going to need a CLM, but that can't be the first thing. Like, you're not going to get that level of change management, that level of buy-in, that level of spend. So instead, it's take all the different NDAs, find as few options as you can, create fillable locked fields where it can populate the commercial information, publish it in your shared document structure that the business teams use in their folder structure so that they don't have to come to something new, and just start gathering wins. And then they start saying, oh, I just populate this, I send it out through an e-sign tool, great, it's done. No more talking to legal about this stuff unless there's a negotiation. You need a win first. And so you don't have to spend any money. You've probably already got the tools. There's probably something that you can do like that. Or maybe you have an RFP response letter that you tailor every time, that if you made it slightly more generic, you could tailor it a lot less and you could drive a lot more value and speed. Get those wins. Don't spend any money. Show the business team how much faster, get some data points from them, and then you move up a level, and then you move up a level. And by the time you move up to whatever your main legal tech piece is going to be, and change management is going to be like a CLM, the business team wants it for their reasons, because they're looking back at the business you drove through the efficiencies of something quick, where there's very little new learning, very little new action, almost no spend. Small wins, show the data, people get behind you real quick.
Thank you, Chad. Excellent points. Dana.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Chad just had to say. I think the fundamental thing is ensuring that you're adopting tech or you're making changes for the right reason. You're not doing it just for the sake of, trying new technology. We've probably all heard this before, but technology is not going to fix a broken process. So you want to make sure first that you've reviewed your processes. You're making sure that you're allocating your work to the right people. But when you are ready to move forward, support from leadership. Don't discount building, solutions with your users involved across all roles. You don't want to leave people out. You can never communicate enough. What's happening, what's changing, what's in it for me. But I think, setting expectations is really, really important. You've got to connect to people's why. Why are we doing this? How does it link to our, I'm talking obviously from an organizational perspective, but how does it link to, the enterprise strategy? How does that connect to what I do day to day at the desk? So I think those are all sort of critical pieces that need to be thought through in order to balance the tech and the change.
Dana, many golden nuggets there, but certainly technology won't fix a broken process. So start with the basics before introducing the technology. Junaid, you've seen this across a variety of different organizations. What are some of the tips for the audience on this end, from the selection to, and I know it's a broad topic, but from the selection of technology to the making sure there's some effective implementation?
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what Chad and Dana said there. It's really getting a good understanding of what are the strategic pain points that are worth solving for. That's how you get people behind you, that's how you ensure that you actually have a successful technology implementation. Right? We have seen it happen more and more with AI over the last couple of years, where the number of times legal departments will reach out and say, hey, we have a mandate from up high to implement AI. So I don't care where, we just need to implement AI. And that's absolutely the wrong way of going about it. So I would say if you're in a legal operations team, you should have a pretty good understanding of what is it that you're trying to enable for the legal function? What is the strategy, the mission, the vision of the legal function that needs enabling? And then what are going to be 4, 5, 6 initiatives that are going to move you closer to that goal? Some of those initiatives are going to be big things like CLM, as Chad was talking about. And there are others that are perhaps more rapid, quick fire things that you can do to build momentum towards the bigger thing. But ultimately, I'll say what Chad said, you need to have a few wins to build that momentum, tackle the smaller things first. Look at first, what are the tools that you are currently using that you could actually leverage, right? One of the things that we find is companies make investments in Microsoft 365 or Google Suite. There's an incredible amount of stuff that you can do within there that we're not doing, that we're not leveraging. Those are tools that people are already in. So from a change management perspective, it's a quick win. It's easy to get people to adopt it. And once you show how 60, 70% automation works, it's easier to get the buy-in for 80, 90% automation.
Thank you, Junaid. Certainly starting with a little wins internally with tools you already have is always low-hanging fruit. Sarah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like Chad, Junaid, and Dana said, we always have to start with the why. Why we are looking at this technology, what problem are we trying to solve here? And of course, we are not, as Dana said, we are not trying to look at technology just for that, like just out of curiosity, but we are going into, for example, a first demo to see if this technology gonna solve a problem our team, our legal team members face. And this is like, I was involved in many initiatives like this, and I can definitely share one of the examples. So for example, in this case, we first hear from the team members who faced the problem. Like, we don't take the initiative to look at X or Y technology. We hear the pain points. And then we hear the same pain points, from another legal team or from another legal team member. And then we say, hey, this is a real need. This is a real or a serious problem we have to look at. And then we look for a technology or a solution in the market who initially can solve this problem. And then what we do, we go into a first demo, like a quick first demo. When we see there is potential to move forward for a trial or something, what we do here is that we gather a group of people who are gonna be like trial participants, and we hire or we designate also a champion. And for example, in the case, in the example I will share is again contract automation. And in this case, I hired 10 participants to the free trial. One of them is a VP, and it's the VP of our business, like legal business solutions team, who gonna be like our sponsor. Who gonna be our sponsor. So in case he gonna go to the business teams and he will speak their language. And to Junaid's points, sometimes we need to refer to our technology roadmap if we do have it. If we don't have it, and this is our case, we can look at. We have a lot of technology tools in our team that sometimes we just don't know who is using which technology. And so we will start by listing or having an inventory of all the technology used and leveraged by our legal team. And from there, because I have it as a goal for this quarter, this will serve as like the foundation for developing a broader legal tech evolution guide and baseline.
Thank you, Sarah. I do have a small follow-up question for you and Dana. And I will pose you the question, give you a second to think about it while I mention something for housekeeping. And really what this is, looking at the audience today, we had mainly LegalOps team members and in-house team members, but there are some that are from technology and service organizations as well. And the question is, what can some of those technology or service providers do to help add value once you've identified, okay, I need to procure for this or this technology or this service? How can they approach it in such a way that adds the most value to you? Or what have you seen that has worked well in the past that you could give us advice to those providers and say, here's how you could approach it with us in a way that resonates? And we'll go Sarah and Dana, but then Chad and Junaid, if you feel like afterwards there was something to feel free to just throw it in ad hoc. So while you think about that, Sarah, just one housekeeping item again for the audience. If there is anything you would like to ask the panel, throw it in the Q&A. I'll try to intertwine it because I know time today will run out. So Sarah, I will come back to you with that question. So what has worked well? What recommendations would you have for these providers? And I mean, I'll give you one context just that I encountered in the day-to-day. I tell our team, the smaller the in-house legal department, and especially the smaller organized legal ops teams as well, only have so many resources. So make it easy for them by offering to do the implementation. So we'll say, if you assign a quarterback, we'll do all the implementation, keep you updated on the steps. That way you don't have to spend as much time. But what sort of tips of that nature have you found work well with you?
Yeah, this is a very good question, Gary, and I can quickly share 2 examples. The first one is one of the tech providers used our own templates, contract templates, and showed exactly to the concerned team members how their solution gonna solve their problems. Exactly. And of course, before that, we have already shared our use cases. We have already shared our business requirements. And the same for the second case, like I am working on this initiative right now, is practical use cases specific to our team, specific to our legal team member, because sometimes the overall problem is common, but when you go and deep dive into this problem, you're going to see that it's a little bit different from one team member to another team member who are part of the same team. But I think it's like our own sample documents, and if we can use dummy data, for example, if we can use dummy data. And for another case, for example, we thought of like moving far forward and use our own data during the trial. And of course, this will require like robust contracts and everything to protect the data. But yes, the most important thing is to see exactly how this solution is dealing with your sample documents.
Thank you, Sarah. Dana.
Yeah, just to expand on what Sarah said, because sometimes these tools can do so many different things, and there's always that desire to talk about all the wonderful things it can do, and that can be a bit overwhelming, right? It needs to be specific and focused. You want to plan for the success of your users, and so what are the specific use cases, making sure that there's at least sort of a level understanding of, the organization and who the consumers are going to be of the product and where they're located and so on, and getting that sort of feedback. But yeah, I completely agree with what Sarah said.
Well, thank you both. And sort of really I mean, what I'm hearing is customize it as much as possible. Don't show all the bells and whistles that your tool can do and get excited because you want to show everything it can do, while what's relevant may be much narrower. Use sort of the templates and the content that per Sarah's point that team needs and there's using their day-to-day so it can resonate with them, because that's how you add value. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, just quick idea is that, for example, in our case, like the solution we are looking for it goes beyond what we already have internally, because we have an AI internal tool that we leverage, that we use, that we maximize, but we still need something that we cannot do with our internal tool. So this is why we we go and explore what is available to the market. So we are not looking for a solution that we already have, or yeah. So this is why we always prefer and push for customized trials and customized demonstrations.
That makes a lot of sense. Really crystallize that value proposition for your purposes, not just what the organization thinks it is broadly in the market. And Junaid and Chad, I'm going to move to the next question with you. Feel free if there was anything on this point that you wanted to add. But the next question is very much the legal ops team is often a bridge between the legal department and other departments within the organization. So finance, HR, compliance. And to truly add value to the business, you need to develop really good relationships with them, understand where they come from, and say, how do we cater to this effectively? So Junaid, if I could ask you first, what are some of the best ways you've seen that done? And then Chad, I'll ask you next the same question.
Yeah, so it's, I think both this question and the last question, it goes back to really understanding what are the problems that people that you're talking to are trying to solve for, right? And so when it comes to cross-functional collaboration between legal and finance, they're very, that collaboration is happening around specific data points, and it's happening around specific processes. So making sure that you have the right sort of governance forum in place, that if finance needs to be involved when it comes to your legal spend and invoice data and approval of that, and if they need to be involved in the budgeting process, you know exactly what that interaction model is going to look like. You have a clear RACI matrix of who is responsible for doing what and who needs to be informed and consulted. That's the part we often see getting missed, where you might know who's going to do X, but maybe finance needs to know that this is happening, or procurement needs to know that that something is there's something happening that they should be aware of. The number of times that we see that you have the procurement team undertaking a transformation of the procurement process, which includes legal procurement, without legal at the table, right? And so how do you bridge that gap? It's by, I would say, yes, it's procurement's responsibility, but here, talking to legal, it's also the legal operations responsibility to identify those overlap points and ensure that you have the right governance approach to sit with them, and think of yourself as a procurement professional in addition to being a legal operations professional, because you are doing procurement in legal as well.
Thank you. Very good points, Junaid. And that consistent communication. Who knew? Communication and consistent key. Chad, go ahead.
All great points. I think then it comes down to, like, so how do you get all that information? And the way that it happened, I felt it worked best. Enthusiasm, curiosity. Don't talk at people, right? Like, number one, other functions are working really, really hard, right? If you think about finance, they're trying to build, what NetSuite or whatever tool they're using. They're chasing money all the time. It's exhausting. They're also being pushed to pay bills. They're managing cash flow. They've got credit lines. Like, it's a lot of work. Smart people, be enthusiastic and appreciative of, like, everything that they're doing from their perspective. Imagine if someone did that for you as a lawyer or a legal ops person. How would you feel? Most people don't do that for you. You'd probably feel pretty great. You'd feel seen. Do that for other people. Then they'll be like, I like talking to you. This is pretty good. Step two, once they like talking to you, ask them questions. Don't tell them things. Don't tell them what's wrong. Don't tell them how you're going to fix it. Adam Grant has this great line. He gets pitched for venture deals all the time. And he says that everybody's got the solution that's going to change the world. Everything's a game changer. If you have not agreed that there is a problem and what that problem is, the solution is irrelevant. So unless people want to talk to you, and unless you ask them questions so they can tell you how they really feel, not about you, but about them, you have no idea what their actual pain is. You have no idea what their goal is. You're only hearing whatever it is they're willing to tell you. It's rarely the full story. It's rarely the truth, and they're not motivated to tell you. So to get all of this information, great points. That for me was the way that we did it. Sales, HR, like all the functions, it applies similarly. Enthusiasm, curiosity.
Chad, if I can just ask you one small follow-up on this, and Dana and Sarah, if certainly there's something on this, feel free. But one of the biggest offenders in organizations tends to be the sales team, because they tend to go rogue more often, and probably the ones that you have a harder time getting their buy-in. What have you found with sales to try to get their buy-in so that they're not going too rogue with the client, and then by the time legal is involved, it's a problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because we don't think about what folks are going through. Like, think about the way that we think about sales. And listen, like, I'm in the sales side of it now, so I deeply also feel it. Is like the way that a lot of lawyers and legal teams feel about sales is that, you seem to make a lot of money to like be on the phone, and then I'm doing all the work. Natural, totally understand that. But the start time of that assessment is when they come to you to say, I need a contract. What you don't know is that half of their comp is based on commission. They're paying a mortgage, they're putting food on their table, half of it being certain, half of it being very uncertain. That is a very stressful way to live. In sales, it is very dynamic in terms of your geos, the client segments that you own. Things change all the time. You're constantly trying to stay up to date on the products. This is a difficult job in a lot of high stress where individual phone calls make a massive difference. And so when you think about why do they go rogue, they're trying to put bread on the table. They're trying to close their quota. Like it's an incredible amount of pressure. And so number one, they may have been working that deal for 18 months before it got to you, beating out competitors. And so when you think about it from that perspective, you can have a lot more compassion for like why they are trying to find the path forward. Because if they don't, they may not have a job, they may not pay their mortgage, they may not be able to put food on their table. So I think when you start thinking about like why sales team acts the way they do, you can understand that. Once you understand that, and you share compassion, empathy, enthusiasm, curiosity, and then you tell them, I want you to close deals 24/7 wherever you are around the world with the least amount of legal touch as possible. How's that work for you? What do you think they're going to say? They're going to be like, well, that speaks to me closing quota, putting food on my table, hitting my commission targets. Tell me more. That's what I would do.
No, I mean, really, and when you distill a chat, is try to put yourself in their shoes, understand where they're coming from, and then who knew that makes it easier to interact. So, go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and that really speaks to, aligning your strategy with the legal team. You're not just providing legal advice, you're being that strategic partner. And you're not going to understand those nuances unless you have invited yourself instead of, waiting for an invitation, but inviting yourself to sit at the table of your various business partners and understanding what's happening. What does the horizon look like? You don't want to be on your back heel doing something in a time crunch with high stakes. And you've got to turn it around quickly. So getting out there and being proactive and wearing that sort of strategic lens, or looking through that strategic lens, I think, certainly it takes you closer. And absolutely love what you said about enthusiasm and curiosity there, Chad. So I'm going to remember that. I'm going to steal it.
And I hope that that everyone from the panel as well as the audience can have some takeaways that they can steal. Sarah, please, I know you wanted to add something as well, and then I'll move on to the next question with Junaid and Dana.
Thank you so much, Gary. I would just like to add that sometimes, like, to answer the answer to this question can vary from like one organization to another, from one size to another. So for example, in our case, of course, it's all the time consistent and continuous communication, of course, but also, if possible, to have specific points of contact. So for example, in our case, because like it's a large organization and it's like large business units. So in our case, for example, in legal, we do have some partners. Like we have a partner from HR, we have a partner from procurement, we have a partner from communication. And so these partners from different business teams, like they sit in our, for example, quarterly team meetings. So they are aware of everything, and vice versa. They escalate what is happening in our team. They escalate it to their respective leadership, and also in our, for example, quarterly team meetings, I remember that we have senior executive VPs invited to our quarterly team meetings. So they share exactly like their strategy or their vision or their objectives for this quarter. You know what I mean? And as I remember, one of the first advice that was given to me by my leader when I first started is, don't forget to attend the corporate and finance quarterly meeting. They host. You're gonna learn a lot on what is happening on the organization.
Sarah, some excellent tips there. Appreciate you jumping in, and it's I knew that this would be a question that would trigger a lot of discussion. Junaid, I'm coming to you with the next question, then I'll go to Dana next, and it's really around KPIs. So we know often legal departments are seen as a bit of a cost center, et cetera, and that adds pressure to the legal operations team to show sort of results as they introduce certain processes, certain technology, et cetera. So the question is, what type of KPIs should we put in place, and then how do you track them as a general rule?
Yeah, so I'll go back to what I said right at the beginning. I would say the KPIs, they are key performance indicators, so they have to really be indicating what the key performance is that you are achieving as a department. And for something to be key, it has to be aligned with the goals and the objectives that you have as a legal function. So KPIs, there shouldn't be a metric that, how many KPIs do we have? Right? That's not a metric. It's about capturing movement towards a particular goal. It's capturing your movement towards creating value. And so there, I would say, think of, when we do this with clients, we think of a number of buckets of KPIs. So there are KPIs that might be related to how quickly you're turning around matters. There are KPIs that are related to how quick your spend and how effectively you're managing that spend. And there are different ways of doing that. You can look at the overall number. You can look at, if you're setting budgets up front with external counsel, what is your actual versus budget. It's looking at if you have implemented technology, what is the usage of that technology? The number of times you might see that technology has been implemented and less than 10% of the people are logging into the matter management system. It's not really a matter management system at that point, right? If only 10% of the people in the legal function are actually using it. So I said there are about 8 or 10 key areas in which you can think of metrics, but ultimately the goal would be, you would think about the metrics around technology usage if you're trying to actually encourage technology usage, if that is a problem area. So the other thing that I say to clients is think of KPIs and metrics as a point in time. You implement them because you're focused on a particular goal or an objective. At some point, you hopefully meet that goal or objective, and then you move on and you think about what other KPIs and metrics you should think about. And sometimes you don't have the data to actually capture the metric that you really want to capture. And so you think about, are there other things that you can be looking at, other things that you can be measuring that drive the right sort of behavior? Because ultimately, KPIs is about driving behavior and driving you towards demonstrating the value that you are creating and giving you the tool to talk about that value.
Some excellent points. Dana, if I could ask you the same question, but I'll add one more component to it, if I may. Because we talked about the sort of service or technology providers as well. Is there anything they can do also to help you with these KPIs? Are there any numbers, any data they can proactively help you with? Because again, we talk about bandwidth within LegalOps departments. What can they do to help you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think in terms of what the vendors can bring, they're doing their own research. They're dealing with, multiple clients. And so they're familiar with, what are the important things to measure. And they may have some benchmarking. So benchmarking is great to have. And then, you can see where you are aligning compared to that, and that will give you maybe opportunities to to focus on. I think that you can measure a lot of things, but you want to make sure that you're measuring what's important to the leadership. So, much along the lines of what Junaid said, if, digital transformation is a key priority, then adoption rates are going to be really important. If you're looking at expenses, measuring your cost savings on your spend is really important. Maybe it's volume, maybe it's what you're doing around productivity. But I don't think we should all, discount as well sharing the success stories. Because sometimes the value add that legal is bringing can't always be reduced to a specific number. It's the initiatives that we're helping to support the business on. So sometimes, using Chad's storytelling phrase from the beginning, telling a story of what they're doing, and that can be really powerful. So it might not be specific numbers, but you're talking about how the legal team is helping to deliver on the overall strategies of the organization and the contributions that they're making. And I would add one more, that we're not just sort of adding or helping support our business groups, but we're also embedding those behaviors ourselves. Right, that the legal teams, I think, probably historically have been a bit averse to technology. We're certainly seeing more in embracing of the technology, but we have to live that as well. We have to increase our technological proficiency and work on those adoption rates.
No, appreciate that, Dana. And Chad and Sarah, if there's anything, please feel free to jump in. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next question.
Yeah.
This is a group that I know there's a lot to cover with, so that's why I want to make sure. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. I will give two examples. The first one from TELUS, and the second one is from my previous job. So at TELUS, we do have what we call the scorecard, which is strategic, and it's required from a very high level. And we do have metrics related to our values. So, and we showcase it at the end of each quarter, how we support the organization in being aligned with the organization's values. And we do have some financial metrics. We do have some legal specific metrics, like litigation outcomes, for example. And so these are tracked and measured quarterly. And then we don't have specific legal operations KPIs, like number of contracts, cost or something. But I remember in my previous job, I was responsible for overseeing the legal matter management portal. And I remember that at the end of each month, I was developing and pulling a report of the activity, and I was having some KPIs, for example, numbers of matters opened during the months, the requester, who was the requester. It was coming from HR. It was coming who made the request, the time of handling the matter, the cost of the matter. So and we try to, it's we try to analyze, of course, but also we try to interpret and to tell a story. So we tell a story with our metrics, and of course we have to take it, we have to do something with these metrics. It's just we track for tracking's sake, but we have to make a decision if there is anything to adjust, if there is anything to drop, if there is anything to keep doing, but to in a more improved way.
Chad, I have a question that I'd like to ask you next, and then certainly open it up to the team, and appreciate, Sarah, the additional piece, because there's so many different perspectives coming in. I know they're important to the audience. So, Chad, the small and medium-sized departments, in-house departments, have limitations that some of the larger departments, and I'll say larger departments typically when we think of Dana and Sarah's departments, it would be on the larger side, at least by Canadian standards. Because once you go to our neighbors down south, then it's the size of the department can vary a fair bit. So automation is particularly important because they have less people having to do more things. What are some of the strategies those organizations can use to balance workflow automation with few resources they would have? Often I mean, as you know, if you have a GC with 1 or 2 counsel, that really limits what you can do.
For sure. That was exactly my scenario. The best thing that I did, once I did all the enthusiasm, curiosity, you understand the pain points, you speak in their language, you get the solution, was I got resources from other teams that were better placed to do the work than the legal team was. Eventually, yes, we learned how to integrate our CRM to our CLM, to our financing tool, to our onboarding tool, and we learned how to do it and we operated within it. We didn't know it before because we hadn't done it in 2019. But what we did know is we had a CRM admin. Okay, so the CRM admin, that's going to be the source of truth for us in that sales motion of the legal tech. Let's get that person to be like our key stakeholder with our integration partner that is going to drive the change. Why would the sales team want to give us that resource? Because the point of what we were implementing was for them, because now they're going to sell 24/7, 365 without touching legal so they can make more money. In that context, they were like, please do this now. And it's like, great, I would love that. Who's best place to do that? Oh, the person who's designed our CRM, they're best place to do it, because this is still a CRM solution. We're just tacking on this piece of tech that allows us to flow it through. So we have a source of truth, we have a contract that legal doesn't touch, and then we get the right data into the invoicing tool so we get payment. Still same thing. Nobody's changing anything. That's how we did it, so that we weren't doing that work. Eventually, the CLM part of the CRM became so foundational that the CRM admin became my legal ops manager. But all of this was driven decentralized into the teams. Why? They weren't doing me a favor. They were doing it because it was better for them. And so if you're a really lean legal team, this is one of the reasons why you should actually care and not just blow smoke. You should actually care about these teams because they're the beneficiaries. They're the ones making the money. They're catching the money. They're putting the money in the bank that pays every employee. So figure out who's greatly useful to your part of the system and then figure out a way that benefits those teams to get you that resource.
Thank you, Chad, and really appreciate that because certainly some of the audience will come from smaller legal departments. So and we need tips that sort of can apply to the full spectrum. Junaid and Dana, if I could ask the next question to you, and really it's around often legal ops have to deal with compliance matters and make sure that as regulatory changes come through, they can implement whether technology, process, et cetera, to stay ahead and make sure that departments are compliant. So the question to you is, what strategies should they follow in-house legal departments? What strategy should they follow to stay ahead of some of these changes and make sure that their teams are compliant? And while you think about that, I'm going to tell the audience one more housekeeping item, which is if you want anything last minute, throw it in the Q&A and I'll see if we can squeeze it in. And then the only thing for all our panelists, when we wrap up after Junaid and Dana, or if there's anything from Chad and Sarah on this item, then I'll ask you each sort of in a 30-second round, just any parting thoughts for the audience that we may have not gotten to with the questions today, because as you know, we had many more questions than time, but naturally we knew that was going to happen. So on that note, Junaid, back to the question.
Yeah, so I'll try to be brief on this. I would say we're living in an incredible time right now where information is accessible like never before. And so I would say if you are a legal function of an organization that has significant compliance requirements and that is spread around the world in different jurisdictions, you need to see how you can most effectively put in place a RegWatch solution that gives you early access to what is coming down the pipeline. Right? Ultimately, legal as the guardian of the enterprise needs to be looking ahead at what's coming and not what's already hit. And so, that information is much more easily available today than it was a few years ago. And then putting in place good processes for once that information comes in, what do you do with it? Like even if you don't have a RegWatch and you're getting email newsletters from law firms and you keep filing them in a read later folder in your Outlook, that doesn't do anyone any favors. So having a clear process for when something comes in, a new regulation comes in, how are you going to look at what needs to be done with it? Is it applicable? Does it need to be implemented? Who's responsible for it? Who's going to take care of it? That process needs to be in place. And that's something that LegalOps can own and LegalOps can drive.
Thank you, Junaid. Very, very good points. Appreciate that. Dana, any further thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, as a federally regulated financial institution, we of course have, extensive governance. And fortunately, we've got dedicated teams in our risk and our compliance environments who are focused on that horizon. What are the emerging risks? What are the key risks right now? And so, from an ops perspective, what we do is just stay, we've got very close touch points with all of those teams so that we have an understanding of the key risks, that we are alive to them and how we're influencing them from the operational perspective, and cascading that to our teams, to make sure that that sort of risk awareness is embedded.
Thank you, Dana. And since I have a little bit more time, just before I ask you for that last round of last minute thoughts from everybody, Chad and Sarah, and this is now we're being futuristic. What trends do you think within the next 3 to 5 years will impact legal operations the most? And if Junaid and Dana want to jump in with any last sort of minute thoughts there, feel free. But we're being futuristic, seeing what we've seen, the disruption historically, etc. If you were to predict the future, which I know is hard, what do you think that could be?
So for me, one thing I love about technology is that it's like takes out a lot of the drudgery out of work. The one thing I'd be mindful of is to like watch out that you don't get in a feature war, like as a human, because that's where I think it's moving. It's like, oh, I know a little bit more about AI. I can do a bit more prompt engineering. Like the technology is going to become so good. It's creating like this baseline of skills. What I think we are losing is the human element, the ability to like deeply be curious and care about other people, because I promise you that a good idea that the other person doesn't care about equals a bad idea. And so as you think about the future, don't only think about building tech skills. I promise you, you will build them. We used to do red lines with actual red pen. No one would ever think about doing that again. You will build the tech skills. So stay on it, do it. It will not be your differentiator. It is too easy to write a good email with ChatGPT now. So don't forget to build the human skills, the human relationships. I see this all the time. It is becoming more and more and more of a differentiator.
Don't forget about the human skills. Thank you, Chad. Sarah.
Yeah, sure. Quickly, I remember 2 years ago when like the hype of ChatGPT started and everything. Like everyone was excited, and I remember the reports where were saying in the reports, like they were saying, legal teams gonna adopt AI, law firms gonna adopt AI, and then like 1 year later, the trends has changed, and we do see like something a little bit different from what have been reported a year before in terms of adoption rates. And maybe the adoption rate is higher in the law firms than in the legal departments. And so like this is something that we have to watch closely, and because there are some lawyers who are very excited, enthusiastic about AI, but there are also some lawyers or legal professionals who are not, and this is totally like legit, and they are not ready to embrace AI. So I think in terms of trends I personally would like to see how AI will be adopted within in-house legal teams, and how it will be integrated with existing legal systems, how it will improve legal workflows. Exactly.
Junaid and Dana, I'm going to ask you just 15-second parting thoughts since we're in the last minute, and then I'll thank everybody.
So I would say we are living in an era where today is probably the least technologically advanced day for the rest of your lives. So be curious, be open to possibilities. Last Monday, I was with a law firm managing partner, and they asked me if in the next 5 years I see AI operating without human in the loop. And I said, I don't know about 5 years, but in the next 6 months, I don't. And then on Tuesday last week, the SRA in England and Wales approved the first law firm, Garfield AI, that is no human in the loop. And so things are moving fast, and it's up for us to be curious and see where they actually can help us.
Excellent points. Dana.
Stay anchored to what your strategy is. Be curious. It's a journey. We have a lot of learning to do. Not making assumptions about what it can do and where it can go. Don't want to constrain, creativity and thought and experimentation, but do it wisely. Do it with the appropriate guardrails in place, and and make sure you're bringing your people along with you.
Thank you very much. I know we are over time. I appreciate all our panelists' time and the audience. You've been fantastic. I hope there have been some good takeaways, and I look forward to seeing you on the future webinars. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you so much.
So.
Yeah.